A very good morning and welcome to Newsroom. My name is Lirata Charlotte. It's also time now to have a look at our headlines this hour. Procurement Minister GHOne Safo expected to answer questions in Parliament over claims of microfinance and small loan centre Maslock CEO failed to go through due process in the award of a 28.8 million Ghana cedis contract. The bulk oil storage and transportation company BOST denies allegations it lost some 23 million Ghana cedis through a fictitious deal. The lives of students of the Academy of the Christ the King Senior High School are in danger as encroachers have threatened them with death if they fail to vacate the school premises. And in Business Institute of Fiscal Studies hold a roundtable discussion on Ghana's debt situation. We'll bring you the latest update from the meeting. These and many more stories coming up in our bulletin. Stay tuned for more. And starting off with our top story this hour, we're going live to Parliament, where Parliament is set to question the Procurement Minister over claims the microfinance and small loan centre Maslock CEO failed to go through due process in the award of 28.8 million Ghana cedis contract. Now, GHOne Safo and Stephen Amwa are to answer for the circumstances under which Maslock purchased 1,800 second-hand vehicles from Germany for 28.8 million Ghana cedis. Now, according to Ashaiman legislator Ernest Nokbe, the contract which was awarded to a private firm, Dextra Impacts Company Limited, did not go through competitive bidding. He claims there was no grounds to have a sole source the contract and the award is illegal. Now, let's take you live to Parliament, where my colleague Ibrahim Al-Hassan is standing by to give us the latest detail. Well, Majority Leader is on the floor, so let's already just cross over to hear him out.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the maker of this statement.
While they're still trying to organize themselves there, let's cross over to my colleague, our parliamentary correspondent, Ibrahim Al-Hassan, who's on the phone line, to just give us a bit more details as to what exactly is happening in Parliament. Ibrahim, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Do let us know what is happening in Parliament.
Well, members of Parliament have made a demand of government and then demanded something. Government to, as a matter of urgency, present all mining agreements that are entered into a mining company to the House for ratification. This is a really constitutional requirement, but the MPs are concerned that even though there is what the Constitution demands, successive governments have entered into agreements with mining companies for exploitation of mineral resources without recourse to Parliament. as we speak, the man who is the deputy sector minister for land and natural resources. Let's hear him out.
So, to upgrade to November last year, and we are hoping that we will also be forthcoming. Yes, there are challenges. For instance, till 2006 December, the fund had an arrears of 92 million Ghana cedis, and this has become the legacy debt on us. The Ministry of Finance is working to ensure that at least some of these arrears would be paid. Mr. Speaker, I also want to assure my chairman of the members committee that our ministry is working hard to make sure that all the necessary conditions are also met. For instance, that of making sure the communities also receive all the necessary funding that we are required. And also to assure you that the fund board, as we speak now, their names have been put together, and currently it is at the Council of Eight for Assets, after which soon will be inaugurated. Mr. Speaker, I believe that I will end here, and then I'll be your government for you to allow people to come here. You will say you end here. You don't direct me. Thank you very much. Our next speaker. Is honorable member for Income. The majority that vote usually listens so that the directive will prevail, so that the work we want to do. I trust that all leaders will act that way.
Hello, Ibrahim. We are aware that proceedings have already started taking place in Parliament, but however, we're just curious, wanting to know exactly when we should expect Adjoa Safo to come and address the members of Parliament.
Apparently, that matter is not on the order paper today. He failed to appear before the House to answer the questions he talked about, but not today, in the course of the week. You are aware that the Parliament will rise come next week. The question has been admitted that the question coming from the Asaman MP and National Way. I want him to find out the circumstances under which the third vehicle, second-hand vehicles, were procured without approval of the board by the acting Maslog CEO. As we speak, what we also know is that Member of Parliament for Kumbungu, Ras Mubarak, intends raising a matter floor of the House, and the matter has to do with the burning of the over 14 trucks by the military men in this constituency. As you are aware, this issue has generated a lot of controversy with demands for compensation for owners of these trucks. So that is just what about is taking now. Ras Mubarak is on the street. We are hearing out.
All right. Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for that. We look forward to hear the updates as the events develop in Parliament today. That was Ibrahim Al-Hassan giving us a bit of updates as to what exactly is transpiring in Parliament currently, and also what is expected to happen on this Parliament probe, where Adjoa Safo is to answer questions on Maslow contract. Now, moving along to the rest of our stories on our bulletin this morning, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers consumers is alleging the state lost 23 million cedis through fictitious transactions at the bulk oil storage and transportation company. Now, according to Executive Secretary of COPEC, Duncan Amoah, Boss sold about 1.8 million barrels of crude at a cheaper rate to an unlicensed company, BB Energy. COPEC wants the managing director of Boss, Alfred Obeng-Boateng, investigated for the transaction.
Says the transaction was done without any recourse to proper lay-down process and without the involvement of the holders of the crude, Tema Oil Refinery. The Tema Oil Refinery has also lost 8.1 million cedis from the transaction of the crude to the BB Energy Company.
At a time when international market prices for crude were going up, only Ghana and, for that matter, Bost found it prudent to sell crude at a reduced price, was rather reducing prices just to be able to sell. When you probe, Boss says that the product had been there for 8 months and it had lost value. We know that crude is stored for up to 200 years across the world. And so 8 months is not good enough an excuse to say product had lost quality or value and for which you need to trade at a discount.
COPEC has called on the Economic and Organized Crime Organization, the Bureau of National Investigations and the Office of the Special Prosecutor to investigate the matter.
We think that there are too many questions that beggars for answers, and for which in the next day or two we are going to ask the Special Prosecutor particularly to delve deeper into this matter, and anybody found culpable to have cost the taxpayer, the state, Bost, Tor, and everybody connected with all of this, anybody found to have engaged in this transaction that has brought up these losses should be surcharged, should be prosecuted.
Meanwhile, Managing Director of Bost, Alfred Obeng-Boateng, was in 2017 embroiled in the sale of contaminated fuel to unlicensed companies. The Energy Minister, Boakye Jaku, cleared him of wrongdoing, citing a Bureau of National Investigation and National Security report.
And now, still on the same subject now, Duncan Amoah, who is investigating or rather probing on this 23 million cedis, is receiving threats apparently. Let's just find out what these threats entail.
I had personally started receiving phone calls from numbers I have put out there publicly. Initially, the countenance was that, oh, let's meet and see how we can trash this out. Then I said, I can't meet on this. That's not how we do our work. We are done with whatever investigations we wanted to do. Our report is out. Then the person says, indeed, he will call back after 2 hours, only to call back and start telling me they know where my family lives, they know where I live, and Ghana, it will be too small for me. And if Aponchireni or Achechedie is looking for blood or Pemoja, Yefremu, and that 3 days, they are going to make sure they finish me.
Meanwhile, the bulk oil storage and transportation company Bost has held a press conference denying the allegations of COPEC. My colleague Francisca Ahin is at the event and joins us over the phone lines for more updates. Hello, Francisca. What has COPEC been saying?
Hello, Lerato.
Yes, please go ahead and tell us what has COPEC been saying? Bost, rather.
The press brief organized by Bost this morning comes at the back of the tussle between the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, that's COPEC, and then the bulk oil storage and transportation company Bost, of which the former, that is COPEC, is accusing Bost of causing financial loss to the state. According to COPEC, Ghana has lost in excess of 30 million cedis in revenue from a transaction Bost had with an unlicensed company. This loss, COPEC insists, was recorded at every stage of the value chain, from the sale of some 1.8 million barrels of crude oil to feed for holding the rest of the crude. Addressing the media this morning, Albert Mante, who is the head of fuel trade at BOSS, dismissed the claims by COPEC, stating that they rather saved the nation some money in the transaction. Albert Mante also indicated that the crude sold to BD Energy was 942,000 barrels and not the 1.8 million as quoted by COPEC. According to Albert, 1 million barrel of tin crude was being refined with Tor before Tor broke down, and the remaining was given back to the supplier called AOT to set off their indebtedness to that company. OPEC also alleged that Tor is not engaged in the sale of crude oil, but this was described as yet another evidence of OPEC's ignorance. Now, responding to the death threat which Duncan Amwa indicated yesterday, OPEC is saying that it will be childish on their part if they want him dead, and yet again will reveal to him that it was that want him dead. So they therefore wish to tell the whole nation that they have nothing to do with Duncan Amwa's death threat, and they will never wish him dead. In conclusion,
on that note, Francisca, thank you for the update. Because of time, thank you. That was Francisca Ahin giving us an update on the news release that is currently underway on the BOSS situation. We will obviously be developing more on the story on our subsequent bulletins. Now, moving along to the rest of our stories in our bulletin this morning, the Institute of Fiscal Studies is having a roundtable discussion on the country's debt situation. Now, according to the Institute, the country's debt situation is growing at an alarming rate, a situation that must be checked. Now, my colleague Kweku Temeng is at the IFS roundtable discussion and joins us live for more update. Hello, Kweku. Please let us know what has been happening on that roundtable.
All right, so if the camera could pan a little bit behind, you can see that there's a discussion, panelist discussion that is currently ongoing. I mean, we have several dignitaries like Professor Kwesi Prempeh, he is the Executive Director of the Center for Democratic Development, that's a CDD. We also have Dr. Johnson Esiama, who is the former second Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, and a lot of other panelists there discussing issues that were presented earlier on by Professor Newman Kusi. Now, the basic issues that were raised here, and which I'm sure you've seen or heard some of the figures. When you look at between 2007 and 2008, Ghana's debt burden or public debt was just around 4.8 billion Ghana cedis. I mean, it's increased to 133.9 billion Ghana cedis. That's a total of it, and that is quite alarming. Now, the IFS has been professing some recommendations that if government should pick up, it's going to really help the economy in managing its debt burden. I have here with me Dr. Said Boachi. He's a senior economist with the IFS, joining me to share his thoughts on some of these issues that were raised. Dr. Said Boachi, many thanks for joining us live on Newsroom.
Thank you very much.
Let me share with you directly from the presentation that has gone on and some of the issues that are raised. Can you give me your thoughts on how really our debt burden can be critically looked at?
Sure. For us, we look at it from the perspective as technocrats, and we consider what government, the various issues and made recommendations as to what the government should do to bring it down. But I'm happy that the panel members are bringing in certain things from different perspectives. In fact, the political economy environment of this country is what is causing the various borrowing, because it is, leading to increases in deficit. The government is coming to power. They promise that they're going to do that, they're going to do that. Meanwhile, there's no money there. So because there's no money there and getting revenue from the people is not so easy, they resort to borrowing. The very thing they usually complain about when they are out of power, they come to power and they keep on doing borrowing, and it is increasing the debt burden. So from the technical perspective, of course, if argue that the government should reduce the size of the deficit, put in effective, debt service management, and many other issues. But politically, is it feasible? That is currently what you are deliberating on.
Of course, Dr. Said Boache mentions politically if it's feasible. In your rural area, you need a medical facility, and governments would critically have to address that need there. I mean, GHOne News will go out and bring out stories of bad roads. Have we considered how those can be addressed? And these are amongst other issues that are critically being looked at here. How we finance that against our borrowing. But Professor Newman Kusi mentioned that at the point that we are in, it is quite unsustainable. I mean, if we would have to go this way. So choosing between social interventions and choosing between cutting down our level of borrowing, as a technocrat, what do you think should be done?
You see, if you do not have the resources and you are still arguing that you need it, then there is a problem, there is a mismatch. Because it is not merely that you are borrowing and you pay back the debt. You are going to pay the debt with interest on top of it. So you have to be sure that the investment that you're going to make with the money is going to generate more return in such a way that you'll be able to pay the debt and the interest. And if you do your calculation, you realize that this is not possible. Even though the need may be there, the desire to achieve certain things may be there, you gotta, reassess and perhaps postpone some of what you feel you want to do now, so that in the future, if things improve, because it is not everything, they say human wants are unlimited. It is not everything that you want today that you should be able to get. You see, certain things have to be postponed. The roads may be bad, but it's not every road that can be fixed. You put down some of the roads, you fix certain, those that are very bad, especially those, the feeder roads. You fix them now and set some aspect of the road, you put them down. A hospital may be needed now, but if the money is not there, you have to postpone that until money can come in later on. But if you say that voters want it, and for that matter, you have to satisfy it at the same time, particularly you have promised, then the cycle is going to continue. And you come back in 10 years' time talking about the same thing, by which time the problem will have worsened.
Thank you very much, Dr. Said Boache. So, Lerato, these are some of the things happening here with the IFS at the Tank Palace, where we're looking at Ghana's public debt situation, which is ballooned to around 133.9 billion Ghana cedis. Now, how is Ghana going to resolve its public debt burden? And we have all these various stakeholders gathered here to give their thoughts and their understandings to how these can really be resolved. For now, I'll give it back to you in the studio and trust that later this evening we'll get more deliberations into really how to help Ghana's public debt. Many thanks once again for joining us. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Kweku Temeng, for that. Well, one thing I hope that will be discussed in this roundtable is with all this debt looming, how are we going to achieve the president's goal of Ghana beyond aid? But that's aside, you'll look forward to that later on in our bulletin. Now, moving along to the rest of our stories here, students of the Academy of Christ the King Senior High School in the Central Regional Capital of Cape Coast have protested over encroachment of their lands by some developers in the area. Now, the encroachment, they explain, has left the school with little land for development, as a lot of lessons in the school have taken place in the open due to the unavailability of land for construction of classrooms for the students. Now, a proposed classroom block has been shelved as the profile done by the contractor has been settled. What the students say has forced them to forgo classes is the fact that the encroachers are even threatening them with death if they don't vacate the area. The proximity of said encroachers to the school, the students explain, is a security threat, as some criminals they believe are operating from the illegally built structures attack them in the night. And now let's go over to our phone line and speak with our Central Regional correspondent Kweku Pa for an update. Hello, Kweku. Do let us know, what is the situation like at the school this morning?
Let me say that the issue of encroachment is not peculiar to this. You've already done stories about the Anchor Psychiatric Hospital, the Anchor School, the Petroleum, and other places that are also battling the same situation. Of course, the school is just adjacent to the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, and the hospital has also been complaining about the fact that land that could have been earmarked for a developmental project, or have been earmarked for developmental projects, have also been encroached upon by these people that we are talking about. And they extended their activities to the campus of the Academy of Christ, where land that is earmarked for developmental projects have also been taken over by these encroachers. And I must say that it is quite dire, it's quite precarious, it's quite serious, because this is a school that has relocated to that enclave because they were battling accommodation issues at their old site, which was in the heart of Cape Coast. And they had to move to this area where they could be guaranteed adequate land for infrastructural development. But here is the case, the encroachers have also taken over this land to the extent that they have even started attacking the students in the night. They tell me that they are not able to study there because some of them will even come, they warn them that they should move away from the area because that same land that they have the school on also belongs to some families, and that family has also in turn sold it to some of these encroachers. So it is a serious situation at hand that the school is battling with. And some of the students even tell me about the fact that even at times during school hours, you have some of these encroachers really invading the school, threatening the authorities that if they dare try to sack them from the place, then they should be ready for the work. And they think that their life is at stake, they could lose their life, and therefore something drastic ought to be done by the authorities to avert it. So it is on this score that they decided to take their destiny into their own hands and take the demonstration.
All right. Quickly, before I let you go, have you received any confirmation of whether the school is going on as per usual this morning? Because I understand that yesterday the students were protesting. Is it business as usual, or is it still on a standstill?
Well, the police were brought to the fray. They came in to make sure that sanity prevailed. They assured the students that their security was going to be intact, and therefore they should return to the classroom after they addressed the issue of encroachment. So that was what really helped the students to calm down, and they therefore went back to the classroom. So as I said to you now, activities are ongoing there at the school. The students are back to the classroom. Just that they are also promising that if the authorities don't really go by their word and ensure that the supposed squatters or encroachers are really sacked from that place for their classroom blocks to be built for them, then they would forgo classes and stage another demonstration. All
right. Thank you very much, Kweku, for that update. That is Kweku Ba giving us an update on Christ the King Senior High School and appealing for government to step in into solving this debacle. And now, with just 2 days left, devastated residents and traders close to the Nima residence of President Akufo-Addo have started to vacate the area following a directive by the National Security. Most of these traders and residents are faced with the toughest decisions of their lives, but they are taking the ejection with a bit of love-headedness, especially as it concerns the security of the first gentleman of the land.
It was a busy day for most of these traders as they were seen going about their everyday activities. But the usual hustle and bustle with trading was lost. Traders were seen parking out as their ultimatum drew nigh. In some 4 days, this place they have called home for over 2 decades will be no more. When the news team visited the area Monday morning, many refused to speak on camera, but their facial expression bore it all. They were beyond devastated by the decision that affects the core of their lives, and the sad thing is, they can do nothing about it.
As of now, I haven't got a new place, so I'm going to pack the things somewhere before I start looking for them, because the time they give was short. I spent a lot of money. 12 by 18 feet. 12 feet by 18 feet. The roofing alone cost me 15 million. The slate and the wood and all this thing. The wood and everything also cost about 7 million. Almost about 22 million. Before the container itself, I spent a lot of money. And it comes like that. See, I'm doing impromptu, so I don't know what to do. But nothing can be done. Because this is my container.
Unya baby kura ese wo siesie ho ansa wa move akọ baby am siesie no men siesie wieye enti se me move ni amana akọ no na ye me problems sie anka metimi nya be se fi enadue ni 2 weeks di anka metimi awie ba se se ye nko Thursday ndia me wie ese me sisa na amana ko sa makoso aye ne kakra me ton container no fufufu but Esan se mi ankasa manya baby antamanko sinti na me kope store no. Eni nti no bia won a mo ye o ma adwun so beto no mo se baby o mo de esi no me container no esu to a sense o mo nya baby emfa nko sinti no kwa me ko e mentimi nya baby aso meja atusi ho.
For these traders, they will be out of business until they are able to get to suitable location for their trade. The once vibrant premises was being cleared of all properties and worse. 2 metal containers serving as shops have already been removed by their owners. Project and Campaign Officer of Amnesty International, Samuel Aboche, after visiting the area, said the rights of these people must be regarded and that government need to accord them with the appropriate compensation package.
We think that the state will do the right thing. We have a protocol for eviction. It is not too late now that the state will come back and do proper assessment of the properties that are here and give them compensation that will not make the people worse off. And that is what we are speaking to. The people also have the right at this point to quickly go to court and place an injunction on the eviction exercise until the right thing is done.
The assemblyman for the area has vowed to fight for them while questioning the processes leading up to compensating the affected traders.
Some of them are there for 24 years now, and most of them have set up an investment over there. So if they are renting, it's not as they are not as squatters. They are renting from the landowner over there.
It has been over a year since President Akufo-Addo was sworn into office, and he has been occupying his Nima residence since. The place has been tagged a security zone, hence the decision to evacuate traders and residents around the bend.
Ranking member on Parliament's Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, Inusaf Hussaini, says squatters living around the president's house in Nima are paying too much of a high price just because their neighbor became president. He is advocating occupancy of Flagstaff House to be made mandatory so that presidents resist the urge to live in their own homes when elected. Now, the former lands minister says it does not make economic sense for presidents to live in their own homes when the state has 3 official residences for presidents: the Castle, Petroleum Lodge, and the Flagstaff House.
Presidential Transition Act, probably amended to include the designation of the official residence of the president and where the president must stay upon election into office. We should just, we should compel the president to move there. Now we are going to use money, and Kufuor did it. Kufuor said the castle was not fit for human habitation. He justified that, went to India, got 60 million, 30 million to be used for rural education, electrification, 30 million for the building of the Flagstaff House. We finally ended with 100 and over million. He didn't live there. Even though he was hurrying to complete to live there, he didn't live there. Now the president is living in his private property. By law, we have to compensate him for living in his private property. Yes. That's what number one. Number two, he drives every day to work from his private property. He's using fuel by the state. He's using vehicles by the state. We are maintaining double security. Security at the Flagstaff House and security at his residence. We do not need to waste time. We do not need to waste resources. We do not need to inconvenience people just for the comfort of the president.
Now, joining me in the studio is Adib Sani. He is a security expert, and according to him, the Flagstaff House is not any safer than the President Akufo-Addo's Nima residence. In a statement, Adib Sani indicated that the security of the president goes beyond President Akufo-Addo. It is about protecting and defending the sanctity and sovereignty of the nation. Well, welcome. And thank you for joining us in studio this morning. Now, one of the main grounds for the evacuations to even take place was security, and then I want to first and foremost ask you, what do you think about these evacuations? Are they substantial enough for these said reasons?
Well, I would say, without mincing words, that for any security officer with the responsibility of protecting the president to think that evacuating the squatters is enough to guarantee the safety of the president is most preposterous and is most naive. If we really committed to protecting the government, the president, then it should go beyond just the traders and the artisans, okay? It should include all occupants of private and corporate property dotted all around the presidency, and that would include completely cordoning off the road linking the Nima roundabout all the way to the Nima police station. That would mean extending the perimeter or the presidential security bubble all the way to the ring road. And I must indicate that it will be filthy expensive to do that. It wouldn't make any economic sense. So from the start, I have always been of the personal conviction that it is not in the best interest of not just the president, but for all of us to have the president continuing his stay at the private residence. Right. And I think
so now, according to your expertise, a lot are calling for him to rather be at the Flagstaff House. And according to your statement, you say that would not also salvage the problem. So where would you subscribe would be the safest for our president to reside?
Well, obviously, we cannot compare the private residence to the Flagstaff in terms of security. The Flagstaff is way better. But for me, from a security analytical perspective, from the security risk assessment I have done of the Flagstaff, the location alone was a security gaffe. I mean, it reveals some serious security nightmares I might not be able to divulge on air, considering the fact that almost the whole Flagstaff area is surrounded by heavy vehicular and human activity. The fact that there are certain buildings around, if you climb, you would have a clear view of the compound of the Flagstaff. The fact that it is uncomfortably
so
too
it makes
close
the monitoring too easy and it's accessible.
And it's accessible, and we're dealing with a highly sophisticated anarchical world order where there's electronic espionage, where people can, within a safe distance, be able to hack into your systems, whether you are online or not. And we're dealing with a much more serious issue regarding terrorism. When I speak about terrorism and I speak about car bombs, people think I'm causing needless panic, but the threat is real and is becoming more and more serious by the day.
It's clear, Adip, not that I'm trying to cut you short. I can tell that you really have much to say, but because of time, for the benefit of our viewers, this is, after all, our news bulletin, unfortunately. Now, it's evident from what you're saying that the safety of the president ought to be a priority. And I think from what you're saying, your sentiments are that in Nima he is not safe. Neither would he be safe at the Flagstaff House. From your findings, what have you generated would be the solution? Where would be a safer location for
so far
the president?
as I'm concerned, the Pedrasty Lodge is the safest place for the president to be, taking into consideration some aspect of security there. The traffic there is one-sided, though, so it can easily be managed with proper security protocols and measures put on the ground, including searches, the cordoning of parts of the road, or possibly mountain barricades, etc. Looking at the topography also, in defense studies, when you are up there, it presents to you some more security advantage than those down there. I'm sure, like you indicated, there's a lot more to talk about it, but
no, absolutely. But at least there is a possible solution and a way forward. Thank you very much, Adip, for joining us in studio this morning. That's Adip Sani, a security expert indeed, just laying it out for us and what the possible solutions could be out of this whole entire debacle. Now we move along to the rest of our stories and our bulletin this hour. We're managing director of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Samuel Bache Apia, has rubbished widespread rumors that government has sold off the company to strategic foreign investors now. He stressed that putting the largest electricity distributor under private care for a 20-year partnership agreement is not a sales agreement, noting that government will still own the assets of the ECG. Now, according to him, the company will continue to exist as a national asset to distribute quality and affordable power to its customers nationwide.
Involves the introduction of a concessionaire to invest in operate and manage ECG's assets on behalf of ECG. So under the arrangement, ECG will continue to exist as the asset owner, and monitor the performance of the concessionaire in terms of how its assets are utilized. In addition to that, ECG would also be a bulk trader.
Ghana's population rate has seen a staggering increment from the 28 million recorded in 2016 to 29 million recorded in the first quarter of 2018, and this has resulted in slow rate of economic development.
Global growth rate stands at 1.5%, but Ghana has a growth rate of 2.5%. This increased growth rate is contributing to slow economic development.
Well, there's so many implications. If you're growing, it means you have to consume. But if you are using all your money on taking care of, you know how fast children grow, education, clothing, shelter, and all that. So then it's difficult for you to invest, for the government to fall on for development. And secondly, if you have that many numbers, you may not be able to have quality education. I mean, you have to face it, because the teacher-people ratio will be compromised.
Available statistics indicate that Ghana's population rate stood at 28 million in 2016, but has increased to 29 million just in the first quarter of 2018. Executive Director for the National Population Council, Dr. Letitia Adelaide Appiah, wants birth rate checked.
Our number will surely would increase, but the rate of increase is the issue. Increase, yes, we will, but the rate of increase. When you have a growth rate that is high and you have young people who are coming in, there are some immediate needs that you cannot gloss over. If we need vaccines, we can use the money to construct roads.
According to the National Population Council, high birth rate has negative implication on the quality of life.
Now, we brought you this report exactly a week ago, and already it has gotten some results. Now, the VOC initiative, a non-governmental organization that seeks to empower people to help in national development, has donated a wheelchair and a few assorted items to help this disabled farmer move around more freely. Alice Aite brings us more on the following report.
Many farmers in rural Accra are gradually being deprived of their income as they continue to lose their farmlands to real estate developers and other investors. Although many farmers in Ghana's capital region are getting frustrated, there are some who have no choice but to continue to farm on their little pieces of land, especially when it is their only source of income. The VOC initiative was touched by the story of old Daniel and decided to pay him a visit and to get him some relief. The executives of the NGO donated a wheelchair and some items to the old man to allow him move freely to and from his farm and other places.
Wow.
After presenting the wheelchair and the other items, the leader of the organization, Speaker Charles Addo, called on other organizations and individuals to lend arms to people in need when the need arises.
We stand for development. So anything that is beyond or under development, we try to bring it to the development level, whether human capital, whether materials, anything that puts smiles on the faces of other people. That is what we are in for, to develop. Immediately we saw the news item, we were like, listen, we didn't have to decide. We were just like, we're going to get him a wheelchair so that it will support his movement.
The project coordinator of the VOC initiative, Margaret Foley, who is also a physiotherapist at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, explained that the wheelchair is what the disabled farmer needs, as crawling on the floor rather does harm to other parts of his body.
For now, his need is to learn how to transfer in and out of the wheelchair, which we taught him, and this is going to aid his movement around. The way he was moving initially is not the best. It's going to have a toll on his waist, his back, and the arms. But at least this one with the wheelchair, he's going to be able to move around more easily as compared to before.
Excited old Daniel Efiogbe showered praise on the VOC initiative team and GH1 TV for the kind gesture. However, like Oliver Twist, he requested for monetary support to help him start a new trade and stop farming, as his condition makes it difficult to farm.
Well done to VOC for that initiative. Thank you very much. Now you see that our stories are not just to inform you, but also to obtain results. GH1 TV is always happy to obtain results on social media at GH1 TV and all social media platforms. Feel free to come through with your comments, suggestions, and your stories. A very good morning and welcome to Newsroom. My name is Charlotte Little. So time now to have a look at our headlines this hour. Procurement Minister Ajoa Safo expected to answer questions in Parliament over claims a microfinance and small loan centre Maslock CEO failed to go through due process in the award of a 28.8 million Ghana cedis contract. The bulk oil storage and transportation company BOST denies allegations it lost some 23 million Ghana cedis through a fictitious deal. The lives of students of the Academy of the Christ the King Senior High School are in danger as encroachers have threatened them with death if they fail to vacate the school premises. And in Business Institute of Fiscal Studies hold a roundtable discussion on Ghana's debt situation. We'll bring you the latest update from the meeting. These and many more stories coming up in our bulletin. Stay tuned for more. And starting off with our top story this hour, we're going live to Parliament, where Parliament is set to question the procure address the country's housing deficit in excess of 1.7 million units. He was at the Eastern Naval Command.
Government is making significant efforts at providing decent accommodation for our security personnel. And what we are commissioning here today will not be the end. Indeed, these completed units could not have come at a better time. Housing is a basic human need, and the desire for a decent home is every Ghanaian's dream. The provision of housing is key to the overall development of any nation, because where we live and those among whom we live and share our everyday lives experiences define community. And for our men and women in uniform who share common experiences of challenges in what you do in the service of this nation, community matters a great deal in support of families. It is therefore prudent for us to have better and decent accommodation so you can give your best without the stresses of where and how to find a comfortable accommodation for your family.
Police have arrested 8 goldfield workers for demonstrating at the Takwa mines. The workers are protesting management's decision to opt for contract mining, which is expected to result in huge retrenchments. About 4 miners were seriously injured after security operatives from the military and the police fired warning shots at goldfields workers who were demonstrating earlier yesterday.
The security operatives also fired tear gas in an attempt to quell the chaos that broke out. Many other workers were injured in the process and were rushed to the Takwa Government Hospital where they are receiving treatment. The workers were demonstrating against Goldfields' decision to go into contract mining. The irate workers have vowed to stay away from work till the company rescinds its decision of going under contract mining. In December 2017, Goldfields Ghana Limited revealed it was going to lay off almost 2,000 workers as part of measures to change its business model and make the company profitable due to the relatively short lifespan of the mine. But the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Mine Workers Union, Abdul Mumin Bana, at the time said the reasons given by Goldfields were inconsistent with the facts on the ground. An Accra High Court dismissed an injunction application filed by the Ghana Mine Workers Union to stop Goldfields from switching to contract mining. This is the second time in 3 years that the mining firm has embarked on a massive retrenchment exercise. A 2014 exercise saw some 400 of its workforce laid off.
Let's for a minute to just go beyond the borders of Ghana to find out what else has been making news or headlines across the world on our international news segment.
The Nigerian government says it will negotiate for the release of 110 abducted schoolgirls rather than use military force. President Muhammadu Buhari said the government had chosen negotiation over the military option, and Nigeria was working with international organizations and negotiators to ensure that the girls were released unharmed by their captors. The students were seized last month from their school in the town of Dapchi by the militant group Boko Haram. However, the Nigerian authorities know that sending troops and aircraft in pursuit of the jihadists holding the abducted schoolgirls is an extremely risky strategy. More than 100 schoolgirls are still missing 4 years after they were abducted from Chibok Secondary School. Prime Minister Theresa May says Moscow must explain why a Russian-made nerve agent was used in the poisoning of former Russian agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter by the end of Tuesday. May said it was highly likely Russia was responsible for the attack in Salisbury, Wiltshire on 4th March. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said it appeared the really egregious act clearly came from Russia and there should be serious consequences. Russia called the claims unfounded. Meanwhile, Home Secretary Amber Rudd will chair a meeting of the Government Emergencies Committee, COBRA, later to discuss the case. Former double agent Mr. Skripal, 66, and his daughter, Julia, 33, were found slumped on a bench in Salisbury city centre. They remain in a critical but stable condition in hospital.
Time now to have a look at our sports stories. The first batch of athletes and officials for the pre-camping period of next month's Commonwealth Games are set to depart Accra ahead of the Games. Now, the team made up locally based athletes would be accompanied by their coaches and led by some members of the International Games Committee, that's the IGC. Meanwhile, second and last batch of athletes are also expected to leave on Thursday, March 15th, 2018, with foreign-based athletes joining their colleagues on March 25th, 2018, when the Games Village officially opens.
Ghana will be participating in the 2018 Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast, Australia. Ghana will be represented by 72 athletes, 35 members of technical team, 4 medical team members, federation heads of all participating disciplines, and 12 officials. Ghana will be presenting athletes in boxing, swimming, athletics, shooting, cycling, paracycling, weightlifting, table tennis, para-athletics, badminton, and hockey.
Still in sports, Novak Djokovic suffered a shock defeat by world number 109 Taro Daniel of Japan as he was knocked out of the BNP Paribas Open at Indian Wells. The 30-year-old lost 7-6, 7-3, 4-6, 6-1 in the second round tie on his first appearance since an injury ended his Australian Open challenge in January. The defeat was just the 5th time in the past decade former world number 1 Djokovic has lost against a player outside the top 100 players in the world. And away from sports, let's now have a look at news in entertainment on eZone, where the Freedom Month is still on and many people have been marking it in style. But how well do you know the designs you gracefully flaunt about? Ajoa Amofause has been finding out.
Talk of Ghana and the richness of its culture is one of the foremost thoughts. Inherent in it is the uniqueness of the designs of the fashion apparel, bags, dresses, shoes, you name it, and the kente cloth plays an integral part.
I am fully adorned in some kente-made designs. I'm told this one that I have wrapped around me is called the Giftianti design. We are still celebrating the month of Ghana, and so we are still celebrating Made in Ghana wear. We are here today at the Arts Center to get some insights on the names of some of these kente-made designs.
Emmanuel Osei-Krokun, popularly known as Ejayao, is a former kente weaver and has been selling kente for 40 years. He's now 63 years old, but started weaving as young as age 23. He eventually moved into buying and selling. He tells me that different designs have their unique meanings.
We say friend Abusunya Edom. Abusunya Edom simply means unity is strength. And this person will call a kwa. Now we a lot of people who are kwana. I mean, a dose who are kwama. Edebeyana ubedi inkunim. We say a friend Sika Freboja. Sika Freboja simply means so sika nipa beba ho so ye friend sika futuru unim se Ghana tete wona ye friend sika mpoa no go coast ntimpanifo no ehwe gold dust no so e na omde eye we say no ntum se it looks like gold dust fatia patan kuma ni blue wine na fatia patan kuma simply means fatia is marry in Nkrumah. ɔfata no sɛ wokɔ wale a so nso sometimes you say obi ne na yere na mo so we dey on fata no but on dey na omo company na efata but time a omo etu enkroma efiri akona so 24 February 1966 omo e change din no eye no se ba akufo mu man.
Well, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin this morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Charlotte. Also, remember, look forward for our updates news at 3:25 and 5:25 p.m. respectively.